refuses to show its appreciation spontaneously, I shall be forced to close it down instantly and burn selected boys. Wait!
It's based on the Boy's Own Paper, really, and Boy's Own Paper was all gung-ho empire building, you know, that was what you meant to do.
What is that, Tompkinson?
It's a model icebreaker, sir.
It's a bit big for a model, isn't it?
It's a full-scale model, sir.
These were the kind of figures and the kind of stories which was about holding the British way of life together.
This is the story of Ripping Yarns, an anthology series created by two of Monty Python's famous team members, Michael Palin and Terry Jones, who carried on the groundbreaking Python tradition by redefining the sitcom as comedy drama.
Bloody fair palfrey! Hey!
We felt almost obliged to experiment with whatever it was, and people would experiment with drugs, we experimented with comedy. We were trying to sort of give good production values, sort of production values you get on a drama, and then put the jokes in.
Now, do you remember what your Uncle Arthur said just before he died?
You know, it's very important to do comedy seriously and to actually make it seem like you really mean it.
A comprehensive spoof of pre-war boys' own adventure comics, Ripping Yarns was made when the British Empire was in terminal decline, kicked and spat on by punk rock.
God save the Queen! The fascist regime!
The story has a bittersweet ending, the breakup of a decade-long writing partnership.
And I thought, unless it's going to be an equal thing, we're not going to be able to do this.
Before comedy punks Palin and Jones started their own revolution, they were students at Oxford University, a British institution. When they met for the first time, Michael was writing and performing in an undergraduate cabaret act.
I remember seeing them and just thinking they were doing the very funniest stuff I'd seen around for ages and very imaginative, and thinking that Mike was particularly funny, especially when he ate Tide.
Sehr gut.
Always got a good laugh, and I think ruined his gums, though, I believe.
Terry was in a different college, so we didn't see each other that much, and he was a year ahead of me. And he looked to me quite bohemian, which I rather liked, being a lad from Sheffield. We didn't meet bohemians very often.
Studying history soon took second place to writing comedy together, and in 1964, Palin and Jones' performances with the Oxford Revue at the Edinburgh Festival drew big audiences, not to mention talent spotter David Frost, and this when the Fringe wasn't yet an essential career move for comedians desperate to get on the telly.
Suddenly it was there was a sort of national audience there, instead of just your friends at university. These were people who actually paid for their tickets, and there were plenty of other shows they could go and see if they didn't like yours.
Just before the show, you go and have a pee in the gents, and it was just downstairs, and you saw everybody's feet just queuing up to get inside. We'd be counting the feet as we're having a pee, and thinking, oh God, look, huge audience.
Suddenly there was David Frost wanting to see the cast, and I hovered about. He never spoke to me. I don't think he even saw me, but I sort of hovered around, hoping to be seen by the great man. And it did give me a lot of confidence. For the first time ever, I felt, well, perhaps there is a possibility of earning a living as a writer or an actor, but it still seemed a very slim possibility.
Slim for Palin, maybe, but Jones got a head start when the top brass at the BBC saw him as light entertainment department officer material.
Well, we could offer you a job, sort of £20 a week, and you can just have a look around and see what's going on, you see. So I had 2 desks and 2 typewriters and 4 telephones in this office in the BBC TV centre. No idea what I was meant to be doing, except just looking around, seeing what was going on.
Terry soon knew enough about the Old Boys network to get Michael a job at the Beeb too, a favour Palin would repay some years later. In 1966, they were recruited by producer James Gilbert to contribute to the Frost Report, joining a vast pool of writers which included future Pythons John Cleese, Eric Idle and Graham Chapman.
And there were so many writers that the roller caption went through so quickly my parents never saw my name on it till about the 10th episode. Finally I said, now wait, there it is.
We were very fortunate in that series in that we had the cream of all the best young writers in the country writing for us, of which Michael and Terry were a very important pair. They had a great visual sense as well, which they were to make good use of.
Jimmy was also very instrumental in me sort of thinking about direction, because he took it very seriously, and he was always ringing Mike and I up about these little film inserts we'd written and saying, do we really have to have 24 motor mowers coming over the horizon? Could we make do with 6, you know? And of course, we used to write in little bits, especially for Jimmy, like, you know, sort of stage directions, say, you know, 1,000 natives come over the hillside and things like that, just to give him a little cold moment.
In 1967, Michael and Terry, along with Eric Idle, were installed as both writers and performers, together with fellow unknown David Jason, on ITV's Do Not Adjust Your Set, a kids' show which was soon attracting a large adult audience. The cast grew too, with American animator Terry Gilliam joining the team for the second series. Over at the BBC, the prolific Palin and Jones were honing their visual skills on shows like The Late Night, Twice a Fortnight.
We'd done one little film sketch, it was about 6-7 minutes long, called The Battle of Hastings.
Freedom gained by truth maintained.
Actually, my brother who saw that and said, well, I think that you should make a series out of that, sort of a funny look at history.
Here, away from the heat of this afternoon's battle, I'm going to try and have a few words with a man who's already being called William the Conqueror, first king of England and Normandy. King William! King William!
We came up with this idea called the Complete and Utter History of Britain, which would be the history of Britain as if there were the modern television camera crews and news broadcasts and documentary makers around at the time.
Well, now what about that incident?
Oh, you mean when Harold was knocked down? Yes. Well, that was a very nasty business, David, and we're all very sorry about it. But I think it was fair. It certainly gave our lads a bit of a laugh.
John Cleese rang up and said, oh, Mickey, you know, I've seen your new series, Complete Art History of Britain. I said, oh, yeah. He said, yes, you won't be doing any more of those, so why don't we get together and do something typically Johnish?
As history relates, in October 1969, Palin and Jones united with Cleese, Graham Chapman, Eric Idle and Terry Gilliam to create what became British television's most experimental and influential comedy phenomenon.
It's Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Monty Python was a series of sort of different ideas, different feelings, different approaches, which were held together by a mutual sort of admiration of each other's comedy, if you like. I mean, we made each other laugh.
Yes, mutton, beef, and trout. Like trout, you'll be that.
Well, the Python shows was very much sort of writing teams. Well, Mike and I wrote together, and John and Graham wrote together, and Eric wrote on his own, and Terry Gilliam did his animations on his own.
It wasn't just sketch comedy that was in its heyday. Sitcoms and variety shows like The Two Ronnies, produced by Jimmy Gilbert and directed by Terry Hughes, drew vast audiences and needed a reservoir of writers to satisfy the thirst.
When Monty Python was becoming a huge hit, as we all know it became, all the writers on it were still thought of themselves as writers rather than performers. And when they weren't doing Python, they were writing scripts for other shows. In fact, we had a contract with Palin and Jones as a team to write party sketches. They write a party sketch every week.
Have a guess. What? Have a guess who I am, you know. Have a guess. Edward Heath?
So they were writers for hire. And I always looked forward so much to the Palin and Jones scripts. They were wonderful. I remember even the stage directions were very funny. I just used to enjoy reading them.
Of all the writers within the Python setup, Terry and I were most interested in slightly longer items, in sort of developing characters, telling a story, a narrative. Terry was very, very strong on this. And we wrote, for instance, the bicycling tour, strange character, Mr. Pither. Another of those awful, some irritating misfits who wanders around the world, being incompetent. I'm still doing that.
Could I have your name, Tom?
My name is Pither.
What?